What would you say about what's the relationship between evangelism and apologetics? I'd be interested in your take on that, whether the two should be separated. Should we have apologists who aren't evangelists and evangelists who aren't apologists? What do you think about that?
It so depends. It's one of those debates where definitions are everything. And see, I could rail against apologetics, and rant and rave, because I'm thinking about it in one sense, and I can own apologetics and love it and commend it to people, depending on what I mean by apologetics. And if by apologetics we mean thoughtful, contextualized evangelism that is not afraid of questions but meets people in the questions that they ask and wants to give them relevant, thoughtful, biblical answers, then I'm 1000% for apologetics, and who could possibly be against it? If by apologetics we mean engaging an unbeliever on neutral space and from first principles, reasoning towards God, reasoning towards heaven, reasoning towards spiritual truth, then I see it as a kind of Pelagianism. The old Pelagian heresy was that in the realm of salvation, you kick things off with a whole bunch of works, and then God might meet you halfway with a bit of grace, and that gets you over the line. I think translated into the sphere of knowing God, you can have a kind of Pelagianism that's like reason, and then God tops you up with a bit of revelation, and then you know God. If that's what people mean by apologetics, then I'm against it. If what people mean by apologetics is thoughtful, contextualized evangelism that takes people's questions seriously and answers them with the gospel, then I'm for it.
Yeah, I mean, go on, Phil. No, you
go for it. You want to follow up? Go on. I think my question will probably end up taking us down another rabbit trail, but I wanted to know what you were about to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, I often find that a lot of apologetics is often aimed at people inside the church rather than outside of it, and I probably wouldn't explain it in the way you did, but yeah, my understanding is that sort of if you're going to be an evangelist nowadays, it's your evangelism has to be apologetic in a sense, like you have to have considered the the questions and concerns that people have, and have thought of take them seriously yourself. But it often seems that a lot of the apologetic books and things going on tend to be more tailored towards the church rather than those outside. But
I agree, and to a degree, it is for the building up of the church. To a degree, seeing that Jesus answers the questions that people have, edifies the saints. That's true, but there is a heck of a lot of shadow boxing going on in apologetics, and I mean I notice there's a lot more shadow boxing going on in the States than there is here, because in the States you can actually build up an apologetics ministry, and you don't really very often have to actually engage non-Christians.
No.
You're always playing to your base.
Yeah.
Or defending from your base.
Defending from your base.
Your apologetics is also internalized. You end up with one slight error on doctrine, or mainly evolution versus order, and suddenly you're defending yourself both from atheists and Christians alike. When you're set up like that.
Yeah, I mean, I did a debate with Matt Dillahunty at the start of the year.
I wanted to talk to you about that, so I'm glad you brought it up.
Okay, well,
I loved it.
Well, there are a few people who didn't.
I love what you.
I read the comments.
Don't read the YouTube comments. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Don't read the YouTube comments, but also don't watch the Christian review videos either. So there are a number of review videos in the States. One of them by a very prominent apologist who, didn't know me from Adam, and he kind of jumped in halfway and kind of said, "This is the problem when you're not a reformed apologist," and things like that. And I was like, "How does he know I'm not reformed? How, I am an Anglican from."
How dare you?
Yes, I am from Oak Hill Theological College. My goodness, I am a Hebrew of Hebrews. According, so yeah, so and what really struck me was that there is an entire ecosystem in the States that rewards apologists not for actually engaging with non-Christians, but for actually defending their tribe and their tribe's way of doing apologetics, to the point where you just take down another brother or a sister because they didn't quite do it the way that you do it. And you spend your entire time in a country that 40% go to church, and it's an incredibly Christian populace. And actually I think I've got a lot of time and respect for someone like a Tim Keller, who recognizes that he needs to look over the Atlantic to England and Europe because they are in a post-Christian moment that is coming for the States. And his impetus is his impulse is to look at the UK and say, what can I learn from evangelists and preachers in the UK, because I need to learn from them and bring it to the US. But then there's an attitude from a few other evangelists and apologists that is a little bit different, and there's just a nasty ecosystem that rewards shadow boxing rather than actually engaging with non-Christians.
Yeah, and that's sort of one of my concerns. I had in my head sort of the US example, like say people having whole apologetics ministries, but rarely, if ever, seem to be engaging with non-Christians. And there's definitely a role for, because I think part of apologetics is, like you said, is equipping believers to sort of have the confidence to go out and do evangelism. But apologetics, just sort of sitting home reading books, honing the ontological argument and the moral argument and the kalam, etc. Has very little benefit unless it's unless it's used in the sort of evangelistic sort of context. But I think there's something about apologetics that draws especially men in, young guys and men in, because it's sort of we developed to well, actually, I'm not going to get into evolution, things like that. But anyway, we developed to sort of fight, and we can't physically fight, and so we intellectually fight, and it ends up becoming sort of intellectual jousting. Like the example you gave for the critique of your video, that kind of stuff frustrates me. But I think the stuff you do is great because people like yourself. I think a good example in the UK would be someone. Well, he's moved to Australia now, but David Robertson was quite good at that in the sense he was a pastor who valued apologetics and the questions that skeptics and non-Christians actually had, and utilised it in its best in an evangelistic context. I do worry about these enclaves of apologetics, but it stays in that enclave and never actually.
And could it do more harm than good in that it communicates to people that you have to be a real bookworm, like those, that tiny fraction of men. And again, we're caricaturing an evangelist. Whenever I say, what does an evangelist look like? It's always male, which is incredible, because then I ask, who's led you to the Lord? And it's at least 50% female. And with apologists, if our picture of someone who's able to engage with non-Christians is a mega brain who knows the answers to stuff, that's just incredibly unhelpful. And yeah, I mean, most of the time when I'm asked questions I don't know the answer to, if it's in a conversational thing, the best answer is, I don't know. That's a really good question. And as soon as you say, I don't know, you're communicating to them loads. You're communicating to them that actually, in spite of whatever this objection might be, Jesus is more compelling.